There's a reason the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Because destiny was never supposed to feel comfortable. It was never meant to be handed to you, wrapped in gold, delivered in affirmation. Destiny is forged in fire. It's shaped by pain. It hides behind every door you refuse to open, every truth you refuse to tell, every version of yourself you buried to make others comfortable. Discomfort is not the enemy, it is the gatekeeper. And most people never meet their future because they keep running from the very pain that was designed to evolve them. Let me say this clearly. What you call discomfort is often the birth canal of transformation. It is the sacred tension between who you were and who you are becoming. And if you do not learn to lean into it, to breathe into it, to see it not as a curse, but as a calling, you will die, with your potential still locked inside of you. Carl Jung understood this when he said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Because the unconscious mind, the shadow self, will not release its grip until you are willing to face it, until you are willing to descend into the underworld of your psyche and confront the very parts of you you've spent your entire life avoiding. It's not the discomfort that breaks you. It's your resistance to it. Every time you avoid the hard conversation, you trade long-term freedom for short-term relief. Every time you delay your dream to please others, you build your future on betrayal. Every time you numb your truth with comfort, you sharpen the blade that will one day sever your spirit from your purpose. You are not tired. You are misaligned. You are not stuck. You are scared. You are not broken. You are resisting the next version of yourself. Because evolution always demands a death. The death of certainty. The death of ego. The death of the illusion that growth can be painless. This is what discomfort truly is. The evidence that you are alive, that you are growing, that you are not coasting through life on autopilot, sleepwalking in the safety of the familiar. But make no mistake, not all discomfort is created equal. There is the discomfort of staying the samuraiting in a job you hate, a relationship you've outgrown, a body you neglect, a soul you silence. And then there is the discomfort of becoming sweating in the gym at 5 a.m., choking on vulnerability in a real conversation, walking into a room where no one knows your name, sitting in the silence of your own mind without distraction. One discomfort will destroy you. The other will deliver you. You must choose, because your destiny isn't found in ease. It's found in the tension between who you were and who you could be. And that tension is sacred. That's what the ancient mystics knew. That discomfort was not to be avoided but initiated. The rites of passage, the vision quests, the dark nights of the soul, they were not punishments. They were invitations, catalysts, spiritual pressure cookers designed to compress the coal of your character into the diamond of your destiny. You want freedom? Then stop worshiping your feelings. Stop making decisions based on what's comfortable. Start asking, what kind of pain am I willing to endure for the life I truly want? Because freedom is not the absence of pain. It's the ability to suffer well, to choose your struggle, to extract wisdom from wounds, to alchemize agony into awareness. The modern world wants you addicted to ease. It wants you medicated, distracted, scrolling, consuming anything but feeling. But you are not here to numb. You are here to awaken. And awakening is violent. It is a shattering of illusions, the betrayal of the old self, the annihilation of the comfort zone. But on the other side, clarity, conviction, power. Not the kind that comes from controlling others, but the kind that comes from mastering yourself. That's the power of discomfort. It reveals you to you. It strips away the masks. It burns the inessential. It shows you what you're really made of. Do you have the courage to be humbled, to fail in public, to admit you were wrong, to be seen fully, seen without the filters, the facades, the social armor? That's what discomfort demands, radical honesty. And from that honesty comes alignment. And from that alignment comes destiny. Not fate, destiny. There is a difference. Fate is passive. Destiny is forged. Fate happens to you. Destiny is summoned by you. And it only answers to those willing to walk through fire. So if you feel like you're breaking right now, good. It means you're in the forge. It means life is sculpting you for something greater. Do not pray for the fire to stop. Pray for the strength to endure it. Because this moment is uncomfortable, agonizing, confusing. Moment is the threshold. It is the portal through which your future self is born. Step through it and don't look back. There is no return for those who have seen what lies on the other side of avoidance. Once you taste the purity of progress earned through pain, comfort begins to rot in your mouth. The old pleasures, the half-hearted applause, the predictable praise, the distractions you once clung to like lifeboats begin to reek of decay. You start to understand most of the world isn't afraid of discomfort. They're addicted to mediocrity. They'll tell you you've changed. They'll say you've become distant, cold, obsessive. But what they really mean is you stopped pretending. You stopped nodding to lies just to keep the peace. You stopped shrinking to fit the mold they carved from their own fear. You stopped apologizing for demanding more from life, from others, and most importantly, from yourself. And they don't know how to handle that, because every step you take toward your potential forces them to confront the distance between who they are and who they could have been. But you're not responsible for their awakening. You're responsible for your own. This is where discipline becomes your compass. Because when the storms rage, when the path is lonely, when doubt wraps around your ankles like chains, discipline is the blade that cuts you free. Discipline isn't punishment, it's devotion. It's not rigidity, it's reverence. It is the sacred ritual of choosing your destiny over your distractions, of acting not from emotion but from vision, of doing what must be done, especially when you least feel like doing it. And here's the paradox. Most people never grasp. Freedom is only found through discipline. You think skipping the gym is freedom? That's a lie. You think avoiding the hard conversation is peace? Another lie. You think numbing your feelings is protection? That's the biggest lie of all. True freedom is waking up with energy, clarity, and purpose. It's moving through life without the hangover of regret. It's looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I trust you. And that kind of freedom can only be bought through discomfort, through the 5 a.m. wake-ups, the delayed gratification, the lonely nights, the unsexy reps, the inner work, the radical responsibility. It's not glamorous, but it's sacred, and it's rare. That's why most people never find it, because they keep trying to skip the suffering, to get the crown without the cross, the wisdom without the wounds. But suffering is not the enemy. Suffering without meaning is. So give your suffering meaning. Turn it into momentum. Turn it into mastery. Turn it into a message so loud and clear that the next time life tries to break you, it hesitates, because it remembers what you did with the last storm. You turned it into a sword. This is what Nietzsche meant when he said, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. When you have a why, a real why, not a surface level goal, but a soul level reason, discomfort becomes a path, not a prison. You begin to crave the stretch. You begin to find beauty in the pressure. You begin to feel more alive in the struggle than you ever did in the safety. Because now you know, growth isn't supposed to feel good. It's supposed to feel real. And there is nothing more real than becoming. becoming someone who doesn't flinch, becoming someone who doesn't chase, becoming someone who doesn't wait for permission, applause, or perfect timing, becoming someone who can walk into the fire, look destiny in the eye and say, I've bled for this. I've burned for this. I've earned this. That is who you are now. Not because someone told you, not because you read it in a book or saw it in a quote, but because you lived it, because you chose discomfort. And in doing so, you chose yourself. Then deeper we go, because the world doesn't need more people who chase goals. It needs people who are forged by vision. People who don't just write affirmations, they embody declarations. People who walk with such inner gravity that their presence becomes prophecy. And prophecy is not magic. It is memory remembered from the future. It is your highest self calling backward through time, asking one question. Will you walk through the fire to meet me? Most won't. Most will bow to the algorithm, to distraction, to the seductive numbness of never trying too hard. Because if you never give your all, you never have to admit you fell short. But that's not you. You've seen too much now. You felt the rumble in your chest when you stand in truth. You've heard the roar of your own soul when it stops whispering and starts commanding. Because that's what happens when you make discomfort your discipline. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop asking your emotions for permission. You start moving like a force of nature, not a fragile idea. And the moment you do, you become ungovernable. Not by others, but by your own weakness. You can no longer be manipulated by shiny things, by shallow approval, by the empty calories of ego. You start to measure life by depth, not width, by presence, not performance. And suddenly, everything changes. You speak less, but when you do, people listen. You need less, but somehow have more. You slow down, but move with 10 times the power. Because your energy is no longer scattered in 100 directions trying to prove your worth. It's focused like a blade, anchored in purpose, driven by something so real, so unshakable, that you could walk through fire barefoot and never blink. This is not confidence. This is consecration. You've been sanctified by your struggle. You've turned your pain into a philosophy. And now, even your scars preach. You walk differently because you died on sand, came back wiser. And nothing in this world is more terrifying than a person who has already faced their death of ego, of illusion, of identity, and chose to rise anyway. You are not chasing success anymore. You are becoming inevitable. And that's when discomfort becomes your sanctuary. You don't resist a challenge, you invite it. You don't pray for ease, you pray for precision. You don't need motivation. You've built a momentum engine inside your bones. Because now, your entire life is a declaration. A living sermon that says, I will not bow to comfort. I will not negotiate with fear. I will not dilute my vision for people who haven't earned a front row seat in my transformation. You move like a miss in the making. And even on your worst day, when your hands shake, when your voice cracks, when your heart doubts, you do not retreat. Because you remember, your destiny is on the other side of discomfort. And you did not come this far to turn back now. You came to shatter bloodlines of silence, to break cycles that strangled your ancestors, to build a legacy so real, so rooted, so relentless that it outlives your name. So go ahead, bleed. Break, weep, scream if you must, but never stop walking. Because discomfort is not the obstacle. It is the oracle. And it's been waiting your whole life to speak. Then let the fire speak through you. Because when discomfort becomes familiar, fear becomes irrelevant. You stop asking for an easier path and start sharpening your steps. You realize the fire was never your enemy. It was your forge. It didn't come to destroy you. It came to show you what parts of you were flammable. Let them burn. Let the lies burn. Let the conditioning burn. Let every false layer of you that was built to please, perform, and conform turn to ash. You were not born to fit in. You were born to erupt, and that eruption, messy, raw, uncontrollably is holy, because only in that chaos does the true you emerge. The one who doesn't wait, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who walks into rooms and doesn't need to prove a thing because the work is written in the weight of their silence. This is where sovereignty begins. When you stop needing life to make you feel safe, and you start moving like someone who is safe, not because nothing can hurt you, but because you've made peace with pain. You've sat with it, studied it, let it teach you its language. And now it works for you. Now it sharpens your instincts. Now it polishes your patience. Now it becomes the background music to your discipline. And from that place, this grounded, gritty, God-level stillness, you become lethal. Because you don't panic. You pivot. You don't react. You respond. You don't collapse when things fall apart. You reconstruct. Discomfort trained you for this. It taught you how to breathe underwater, how to make peace with pressure, how to wear uncertainty like armor. That's the superpower. That's the edge. Not talent, not charm, not status. It's your threshold for discomfort. The longer you can sit in the tension of becoming without numbing it, rushing it, or selling out, you win. Because discomfort always offers a deal. It says, numb this now, and I'll let you feel good for a little while. But growth says, endure this now, and I'll make you unrecognizable later. And that's what's happening to you. You are becoming unrecognizable to your old self, to the people who knew you only as a watered-down version, to the environments that demanded your silence. You're not angry. You're awake. You're not better than anyone. You're done shrinking for everyone. And with that, everything begins to align. Not all at once, not in perfect order, but in rhythm with your soul. And it all started the moment you stopped seeing discomfort as punishment and started seeing it as a sacred initiation. That's the final truth. Your destiny is not on the mountaintop. It's in the mud. It's in the breaking. It's in the nights when your voice trembles and your hands bleed and your faith wavers, but you keep showing up. Because destiny doesn't belong to the gifted. It belongs to the gritty, to the ones who were willing to suffer beautifully, to endure silently, to transform privately and rise publicly with power in their step and prophecy in their bones. You are that one. You always were. Now walk, and don't you dare look back. Walk like you remember where you came from, but even more like you know where you're going, because destiny doesn't knock. It waits in silence, watching how you move when no one's watching, watching how you carry yourself when the applause stops, watching how you talk to yourself when you fail, how you rise after you've bled, how you breathe when the air feels like knives. That's where it's decided. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in the comfort of success, but in the crushing weight of becoming. You see, everyone wants to shine until they realize what light costs. It costs your illusions. It costs your distractions. It costs your attachment to the small version of you that they were comfortable with. It costs your ability to hide. And the question is, are you willing to pay? Because to get to your destiny, you will have to become someone your past doesn't recognize. You'll have to disappoint the crowd to honor your conscience. You'll have to say no to opportunities that don't align with your vision. You'll have to lose battles that don't matter to win wars that do. You'll have to become the villain in someone else's story just to remain the hero in your own. And yes, it will hurt. You will miss people who never really saw you. You will grieve the versions of you that kept the peace at the cost of your power. You will walk through seasons of silence so long you'll wonder if you were wrong to even try. But you weren't. You were being refined, tested, stretched, prepared for a throne that can't be inherited, it can only be earned. You don't find purpose. You forge it through 1,000 uncomfortable choices, through walking away when it would be easier to stay, through saying yes to things that terrify you and no to things that used to define you. That's what real growth feels like. Uncomfortable, inconvenient, undeniable. And once you've tasted that kind of power, the kind that comes from alignment, not approval, there's no going back. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop chasing hacks. You stop asking for permission. You just become every day, every rep, every breath. You become the kind of person who doesn't need destiny handed to them because they build it. You become so focused, so locked in, so unshakably clear that life has no choice but to move out of your way. Obstacles become detours. Failures become fuel. Pain becomes poetry. You turn everything into something. And if you keep walking one step, one choice, one moment at a time, you will wake up one day in a life you can't believe you built. Not because it was easy, but because you refused to settle. Because you learned to suffer well. Because you made discomfort your compass and destiny your destination. And when people ask you how you did it, you won't have to explain. They'll feel it in your silence. They'll see it in your eyes. They'll know it in your presence, that you didn't just survive. You transcended. You didn't just hope. You became. So keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's true. And the truth, it was always this. Your destiny is not just on the other side of discomfort. It is born from it. Then let this be the final word, not a conclusion, but a commandment. Because you were not summoned to this life to watch others rise while you hesitate in the hallway of hesitation. You were not placed in this time, in this body, in this exact breath, to shrink beneath the weight of your own doubt. You were carved from the same eternal fire that built empires, crossed deserts, and rewrote the destiny of bloodlines. But fire, by its nature, is not still. It does not beg. It does not wait. It burns, and so must you. Burn through the fog of your former self. Burn through the echo chamber of doubt that has kept your greatness on mute. Burn through the illusion that something softer, easier, quieter will ever satisfy the ache in your soul. You are here now to do something that terrifies the world and honors the God in you. You are here to take everything they said was too much, too risky, too unrealistic, and make it non-negotiable. You are here to be hated if it means being whole, to be misunderstood if it means being real, to be alone if it means being aligned. And yes, it will cost you. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you community for a time. It will cost you the cheap piece of pretending to be less. But what you gain will silence every voice that ever told you to settle. Because one day when the smoke clears and your name is whispered not for who you followed but for what you became, they will look at you not as someone who had luck or privilege or timing, but as someone who walked straight into the fire and came out with a crown. And they will ask you how you did it. And you will say, without flinching, I learned to stop fearing discomfort. I made it my sanctuary. I made it my scripture. I made it my sword. And in doing so, I became untouchable. This is not poetry. This is prophecy. This is not a mantra. This is a new law of self. A law that says you will never again abandon your highest self just to maintain someone else's comfort. That you will never again ask for permission to become someone they were too afraid to be. That you will never again bow to a past version of yourself, just because that version was more palatable to the masses. You are not them. You were never meant to be. You are not soft. You are sacred. You are not loud. You are legendary. You are not waiting. You are walking through fire with a destiny in your mouth and a storm in your chest. And when it gets harder, as it will, you will not collapse. You will not retreat. You will remember this truth, that everything you are becoming lives just beyond the edge of your comfort. And every second you delay is another second you deny the world the gift of who you really are. So go. Go with fury in your purpose. Go with fire in your discipline. Go with faith tattooed in the bones of your doubt. Go until your name becomes a frequency. Go until your presence becomes a prophecy. Go until your breath becomes a battle cry. And when you arrive scarred, sovereign, and utterly unrecognizable, they will know, not because you told them, but because you showed them that your destiny was never found in comfort. It was forged in the fire you dared to walk through. Before the world gives you anything, it will first watch how you think, not what you say, not what you dream, but how you perceive yourself, others, time, pain, power. Because wealth isn't handed to you. It is mirrored back by the patterns of your consciousness. Most people never become wealthy, not because they lack effort, but because they think like servants, not sovereigns. They think in reactions, not creations. They think in limitations, not in leverage. They beg reality for crumbs instead of realizing they are the baker. To think like the wealthy is not to obsess over money. It is to transcend money. It is to view wealth as an echo of mindset, clarity, and internal architecture. The poor man asks, what can I afford? The wealthy mind asks, what can I build? What can I own? What system can I design that prints freedom while I sleep? This is not about dollars. This is about dominion. The masses wake up thinking about tasks. The wealthy wake up thinking about leverage, time, people, code, capital, brand. They ask, where is the multiplier? Where can I plant one seed and reap a forest? But you don't think like that when your self-worth is tied to being busy. Busyness is the new poverty movement without mastery, activity without purpose, urgency without strategy. And the wealthy don't chase. They position. They don't sprint for scraps. They design arenas where value flows to them. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What most call bad luck is simply a mind that has never been taught how to think, how to question, how to see. Because sight is not vision. Sight is passive. Vision is prophetic. To think like the wealthy is to be ruthless with clarity. Clarity is the weapon of the few. The poor mind clouds itself with options, distractions, opinions. The wealthy mind eliminates, simplifies, distills reality to essence. It says, this is what I want. This is what I need to become. Everything else is noise. But most people are addicted to noise. Addicted to being stimulated, not sharpened. They think they're thinking, they're not. They're reacting, drowning in the dopamine of digital hypnosis, mistaking movement for meaning. The wealthy man thinks in systems, not moments. He doesn't just want to win. He wants to build an engine that wins while he sleeps. Ownership over labor, royalty over wages, creation over consumption. And the paradox? That kind of mind is forged before the money ever shows up. Because wealth is not a bank statement, it is a standard. How do you speak to yourself? Do you fold under pressure, or do you become surgical? When the chaos comes, and it will do, you ask, why me? Or do you say, good, now we go deeper? To think like the wealthy is to train yourself to respond with strategy, not emotion. It's to weaponize adversity, to turn every no into a blueprint, every rejection into refinement. The masses wait for the perfect conditions. The wealthy start with what they have. They launch not because it's ready, but because perfection is the mask of the coward. What can you do today that creates disproportionate returns tomorrow? That is the question that separates legacy from mediocrity. But most never ask it, because most were never taught that the real war is internal. You don't beat the world by shouting. You beat the world by becoming so clear, so rare, so aligned, that reality has no choice but to bend. And it starts in the mind. This is not fantasy. This is psychological warfare against your conditioning, against your comfort, against your craving to be liked instead of legendary. You were not born to comply. You were born to create. To think like the wealthy is to reject victimhood, no matter how justified it feels. It's to stop narrating your pain and start monetizing your power. To ask not, why is this happening to me? But what muscle is this trying to forge in me? The wealthy mind turns trauma into strategy, loss into leverage, fear into fire. And that fire, that's your access point. That's your alchemy. Because what you do with your fear determines what you get from your future. You either run from it and stay trapped in average, or you face it and mine it for insight. That's what thinking like the wealthy is. It's spiritual warfare disguised as financial ascension. It's understanding that the first asset is not cash, it's consciousness. Build that, refine that, own that, and everything else will follow. The masses ask, what job can I get? The wealthy ask, what problem can I solve that no one else has mastered? The world doesn't pay you for effort. It pays you for value. And value is not measured by how hard you work. It's measured by how irreplaceable you are. That's what the wealthy mind obsesses over. Irreplaceability. Not approval, not trendiness, not applause, but becoming so singular, so undeniably rare, that the world must rearrange itself to accommodate your presence. Because once you reach that level of psychological evolution, you don't compete. You create categories. You don't beg for a seat at the table. You build your own table and decide who's worthy of sitting at it. But none of that starts with money. It starts with how you see yourself when no one is looking. What is your internal dialogue when things collapse? Do you default to despair, or do you activate design mode? Do you crumble, or do you construct? This is why Jung's work remains so lethal and necessary, because he understood the true battle is not external. It is within. The unconscious mind is the architect of your fate. And until you take control of that architecture, you will remain a slave to patterns, to people, to poverty. The wealthy think in archetypes. They don't just read philosophy, they embody it. They understand the roles they must play. The warrior who acts in the face of fear. The king who builds systems and leads with vision. The magician who sees patterns others miss and manipulates reality through knowledge. The lover who connects deeply, builds networks, and inspires loyalty. Most men are trapped in one role. The wealthy rotate them all as needed. They are not rigid. They are adaptive weapons. They shift gears from monk to general, from student to sovereign, not out of performance, but from integration. Because to think like the wealthy, you must become fluid. Rigid minds break. Adaptable minds bend reality. That's the essence of what separates them. They do not fear loss because they understand money can be lost. But skill, clarity, character, those are infinite. They are wealth you carry into every room, every market, every economy. And this is where you must turn inward and ask yourself, what am I building inside me that no one can steal? Because if the answer is nothing, then you are already bankrupt no matter what's in your account. But if you're building discipline, if you're sharpening focus, if you're hardening your philosophy, then you are already wealthy. The world just hasn't caught up yet. It will. It always does. Because wealth, real wealth, is not a destination. It's a wavelength. And once you start to vibrate at that frequency through thought, through action, through belief, you begin to pull reality toward you. Not with force, but with gravity. And gravity doesn't shout. It simply is. That's what thinking like the wealthy gives you gravitational pull. You stop chasing, you start attracting, not by becoming louder, but by becoming heavier. Heavier in value, heavier in presence, heavier in truth. Most people live as leaves in the wind, drifting with trends, with gossip, with fear. The wealthy think like roots, deep, invisible, but capable of holding up entire forests. They don't move because others move. They move others. And here lies the most savage truth. You are either being programmed or you are programming your own mind. There is no middle ground. The average person wakes up and is immediately hijacked by someone else's agenda. The news, social media, opinions, fear. Their mind is not their own. It's a rented room filled with someone else's furniture. But the wealthy, their mind is fortified, designed, maintained like a kingdom. No unfiltered opinion enters without being examined. No distraction lingers without being executed. Because every thought is either an asset or a liability. And they guard that temple like warriors. They understand that everything starts in the mind. And whatever owns your attention owns your future. That's why the wealthy don't just master markets. They master attention. Their own first, then others. You must become unshakable in your internal economy before you ever master the external one. Because thinking like the wealthy means this. You do not wait for inspiration, you command it. You do not crave motivation, you engineer it. You do not hope for confidence. You build it from scars. And most of all, you stop living for the high of outcome and start living for the brutality of process. Because that's what separates the minds that earn millions from the minds that scroll past them. Process. The wealthy love the boring, unsexy, repetitive discipline that turns iron into gold. Because they know if you master the process, the outcome is inevitable. But the poor mind chases dopamine. The wealthy mind builds dopamine discipline. They know how to delay gratification like it's a religion. They turn silence into symphonies. They turn solitude into strategy sessions. They build in the dark until light begs to showcase what they've become. This is not talent. This is not luck. This is design. So if you want to think like the wealthy, stop worshipping what they have. Start studying how they see, how they choose, how they move, how they suffer strategically, why the world sleeps in numb comfort. Because behind every fortune is not just hustle, there is philosophy. A warrior mind, a man who sharpened his perception until reality bent to it. And that begins now, with you. Not with what you earn, but with what you burn. Your excuses, your distractions, your addiction to comfort. Burn them and let what remains be forged into a mind that doesn't just survive this world, but redefines it. Because the man who redefines the world does not wait for permission. He doesn't look for signs. He becomes the signal. He knows that the rarest currency on this planet is not money. It's clarity. Clarity in thought, clarity in movement, clarity in identity. And with that clarity, he slices through mediocrity like a blade through fog. Not with rage, not with haste, but with precision. Ruthless, elegant, unwavering precision. That's the difference between the average thinker and the wealthy mind. The average thinks to survive, the wealthy thinks to strategize, to orchestrate, to dominate not others, but himself. Because mastery over others is child's play. Mastery over self That's where gods are born. The wealthy don't dwell on the past. They extract insight, extract meaning, extract power. Because pain is not a pit, it's a mine. And in it is buried the raw material for your next evolution. But the average man avoids it, runs from it, tries to bury it under noise and numbing. The wealthy man goes into it armed with vision and the will to transmute suffering into strength. That's why the wealthy mind speaks differently, moves differently, feels different, because he's integrated, not just knowledgeable whole, and wholeness makes you dangerous. Why? Because when you're whole, you can't be baited, you can't be sold, you can't be enslaved by cheap praise or petty opinions. You've already bought your soul back with discipline, with silence, with sacrifice. And that soul intact and focused is the engine behind every move. The man who thinks like the wealthy is always building something bigger than himself, not for glory, but for legacy. Because he knows when he dies, his name won't echo because of what he consumed. It will echo because of what he created. But to create like that, with intention, with depth, with divine violence, you must kill something first. The weak version of you, the pleaser, the doubter, the compulsive procrastinator, the man addicted to tomorrow, you must slaughter him. Every day you wake up, you choose which version of you will win. And the wealthy mind never delegates that decision. He makes it like a warrior choosing his weapon. He chooses discipline. He chooses vision. He chooses alignment. And then he executes without drama, without negotiation, without applause. Because to him, execution is not a task, it's identity. He doesn't wait for results to validate his worth. He knows the result is already done the moment he chose to think like a king, not a consumer. The average man thinks, one day I'll be rich. The wealthy mind thinks, today I build as if I already am, because wealth is a reflection of the internal throne I sit on. And that throne is forged in decisions no one sees. Waking up early when your body wants comfort, turning off the noise when your ego wants attention, reading deeply when your mind wants dopamine, building systems when your emotions beg for distraction. That is where the throne is formed, not in public, but in the private rituals that turn peasants into kings. So the next time you wonder if you'll ever be wealthy, ask yourself this. Do I think like a king or like a beggar with dreams? Because your answer is already shaping your destiny. The man who thinks like the wealthy doesn't hope for transformation. He becomes it. He doesn't fantasize about freedom. He structures it into his daily movements. His mind is no longer a place of dreams. It's a place of orders, precise, final, non-negotiable. He no longer says, I'll try. He says, this is who I am now. And then he acts in accordance ruthlessly, because he knows the brain does not respond to wishes. It responds to identity. You don't get what you want. You get what you believe you are. And belief is not affirmations on a mirror. It's the sum of the actions you take when no one's watching. It's the consistency of character under pressure. It's the quiet war inside that no one ever sees, but everyone feels in your presence. To think like the wealthy is to walk into a room and not need to prove anything, because your energy already speaks of conquest. Your stillness already reveals your depth. Your restraint already screams mastery. And in a world addicted to proving, the man who doesn't need to is a rare force of nature. He knows that real wealth is not in how much you spend, but in how little you need to validate yourself. Real wealth is internal autonomy, mastery, sovereignty. It's the freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't align, because you're not desperate, you're disciplined. That's the ultimate power, to choose your life, not be chosen by circumstances. The average man reacts. The wealthy man orchestrates. He sees 5 moves ahead. Not because he's smarter, but because he's slower in thought, faster in intent. He doesn't rush. He observes. And then when the time is right, he strikes with finality. This is what makes him unstoppable. Not volume, not speed, but precision. So if you want to think like the wealthy, slow down. Not in ambition, in thought. Cut through the noise. Question everything. Build from principles, not from pressure. Because when you move from timeless principles, you build things that outlast you. That's what legacy is. That's what wealth is. Not a Lamborghini, not a viral clip, not a follower count, but the impact of your thoughts made flesh. The way your mind changed the trajectory of others. The way your clarity created jobs, built systems, raised standards. The wealthy mind lives for that. For contribution over consumption, for immortality over indulgence. So let them mock you now. Let them laugh as you build in silence, as you reject the shortcuts, as you live like a monk in a world of addicts. Because when the tower is complete, when the world finally sees what you built, they will not remember your humble beginnings. They will remember the mind that dared to think different. They will remember you.